you always, I served in the state house and the state senate in Georgia for about 9 years. Excuse me. I had no intention of running for Congress. It was something that I never thought of. And then the congressman who was serving in this district decided to run for the Senate unsuccessfully. I actually met in my home with my family, who all been politically engaged, and we were trying to find that right candidate. It's one of the most conservative districts in the nation, and we're sitting around and we're talking about it. And the more we talked about it, the more my daughter and my two sons started saying, "Dad, you need to do this." Of course, that's when all the excuses started coming. Now, I've had a small business that has been struggling over the past several years, like everyone else, and we have a nonprofit where we teach these values and the true foundations of American history. And I kept going through all the reasons why I couldn't run, and I finally just told them, I said, "Look, after years of struggling, especially with our business, we're starting to get comfortable again." And that's when my daughter looked at me in so many words. She said, "So God called you to be comfortable." And as we talked about it, she expressed what a lot of people were feeling is, this nation that you've taught me to love, we're losing. And unless we have the right people who are willing to go fight the fight, we're going to lose it. After a lot of consideration and prayer, we decided that this was the direction to go. And as I sat with our campaign team, I said a lot of the things that Gary and others have been saying without coordinating. There was a coordination with all these Republican candidates, these new Republican candidates running, but I started hearing the same thing, is that we need to quit defining ourselves by what we're against. That's what really has defined conservatives for years. We've been defined by what we don't like. Let's be defined by what we're for, and let's come up with solutions. We don't have to convince Americans that their nation is off course. They know it. They're living it. Obamacare is the reality. What we have to do is reinstall hope that we can make a difference. And that's what we started focusing on, is that we can make change. Now, one of the things that I also realized that we've been talking about ever since the election is one of the problems we have as conservatives is we have no strategy and we use poor tactics. If you want to use military terms. What is our strategy? You can boil that down to vision. We have a lack of vision. And you know what the scriptures tell us? If you have a lack of vision, you will perish. And we started talking about what do we want America to look like?
It's awful.
Not tomorrow, not next week.
Sounds fun.
Not 2 years, not 4 years, but by the year 2030.
You can't switch
What
screens,
do we as
switch
conservatives want America to look like?
I don't think so.
You see, there's a lot of people in my generation, we still remember what America used to be,
So,
what it could be.
guys,
And it can be again. I tell the story of my dad, who, when I was in high school, he worked for a building contractor. He came home from work one day. He said, "I just wanted to tell you I started my own construction business today."
Because you're a T-Swift.
And I remember thinking, and I actually asked him, I said, well, how did you do that? He said, "Well, I went and got a business license and I got the insurance,
that's fine.
and I'm in
I'll
business."
ask her when I see her.
You know,
Yeah,
the
when
founder
your
of
friend
Home
runs into
Depot
her.
recently said he could not
Yes.
start
Yes,
Home
sir.
Depot today
I'm going to do that.
in today's regulatory environment. But I remember when I was talking to my dad, I remember exploring it more. I said, "That's all you needed to do to start a business?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "What's so great about this country?" Now, he is a World War II veteran, medic in World War II.
How do you drink that much?
He said, "What's so great about this nation is that you have the freedom to do whatever you want to do, and government is simply there to protect your rights. So in your pursuit of happiness, you don't violate your neighbor's pursuit of happiness." So I remember thinking, America is so great, you can do whatever you want to do, except for a few things that government is protecting you from, protecting someone else's rights from you violating. But the mentality of the next generation following us is, what will the government let me do? And we started realizing that not only do we have to define what America can be, we have to define it in a way that the generation following us that never experienced that America, that they would understand. I was invited a couple of months ago to speak to one of the colleges in our district to their political science class. And it was a joint political science and marketing or communications class. There was about 75 students in the room, and majority of them were minority. And after speaking to the class, as it turned out, the majority of them were not associated as conservatives or in the Republican Party, at least at the beginning of the program. But as we were there, I realized that something we talked about in the campaign is a lot of times conservatives, we operate in this sphere of the mind. But most voters operate in the sphere of the heart. And we have to connect those two. And so the topic they asked me to speak about was the Bill of Rights. Now, instead of just going down the Bill of Rights, I decided let's talk about what the vision of the Founding Fathers was. What was the character? What was it that they wanted? And what was behind their pursuit of having a Bill of Rights instead of going down through each Bill of Rights? So I wrote up on the whiteboard, I said I can put in one word the whole idea behind the Founding Fathers and their Bill of Rights, and I wrote the word liberty. And we started talking about what liberty meant, and I told them the story of my father starting his own business. And as we progressed in it, I said, now, let me ask you a question. What did the Founding Fathers believe was the greatest enemy to liberty? Went around the room, British Army, there was other suggestions. But I went back up to the board, and right next to liberty, I wrote government. Our Founding Fathers said that the very thing they were creating was the greatest enemy to what they wanted to achieve. And that's why it had to be limited. And I realized I was starting to connect. So I finally asked the group, I said, how many of you in this room believe that you can achieve the American dream? You know, the traditional American dream of owning a home. Only 3 or 4 people raised their hand, these students. And I asked them why, and they said, we can't afford it. We do not believe we will ever be able to afford to buy a home. So I asked them, I said, how many of you in this room, if I could tell you that tomorrow we could reduce the price of a home by 50%, how many of you believe you could achieve the American dream? And they all raised their hand. I said, well, let me tell you what this enemy to liberty can do by regulating. You see, I was just in a meeting with a home builders association who told me that 50 or 60% of the cost of a new home is because of government regulation.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
It started to hit home with them. We went down to a few other scenarios. By the time we got done, a young African-American girl came up to me afterwards, and she said, I have grown up in a household of staunch Democrats. My parents are Democrats. I'm a Democrat. You just made a conservative out of me. Now, she didn't say Republican. She said, you just made a conservative out of me. I said, no, ma'am, I didn't. I just let you realize what you already were. Why? Because we changed our messaging and we built a vision, a strategy. That's what we need to be doing as conservatives. We have to convince the generation behind us because, as Gary said, this is a multi-generational task. It took us a long time to sell our liberties away. It's going to take a long time to get it back. We have to be patient. One of the problems that we've had in the past is if we were a football team, the conservatives, every time we got the football, we threw a Hail Mary pass. And if we didn't score, we assassinated the football team when they walked back off the field. You win a football game by moving the ball down the field a little bit at a time to get some first downs, and the first downs will get you touchdowns, and more touchdowns than the other guy, you win the game. We have to be patient. We have to change our mode. We have to have a vision. We have to change our tactics, and we have to be working together. If you look at the liberal side of politics, they don't agree on everything. There's a lot of disagreement, but they have learned to unify behind those things that they want to accomplish. That's how they have achieved that. We have to do the same thing. I still believe in American exceptionalism. I think we have to define what America needs to be by the year 2030. I've told people the most dangerous thing we're facing is an $18 trillion debt. Had several people tell me recently, it's impossible. We can never pay off that kind of debt. I said, well, I still believe in American exceptionalism, which Americans can accomplish anything if they put their mind to it. They have a vision, they know where they're going, they set a goal, and they plot a path to get there. And I said, well, let me ask you this question. If we were back in 1960 and I give you this choice, which do you think would be the most possible? To pay off an enormous debt or put a man on the moon? Every one of you would have said to pay off a debt. But if I recall, there's only one nation's flag on the face of the moon. It's the United States of America. Why? Because we set our mind upon a goal. We built an agency to manage. If you think about it, it was the private sector that got us to the moon. NASA managed the contractors who had the ingenuity and the technology, and they didn't stop till they got it done. I still believe American exceptionalism is there, and I think it's just we have to spark that into not only this generation, but the new generation, and we can restore America so our kids will have a country that's free, safe, and full of opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.